Go.
Hi everyone. I was hoping for the introduction video, but sorry. Hi everyone, welcome to Women Atheists UNLOAD. I'm your host, Cindy Plaza, and so tonight we're going to talk about Justice Alito and his opinion piece and what he says in it. And for this topic, I'm going to have by my side Sunny Shell.
Hey,
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. I hope your voice is going to be uh, uh, willing to help tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna be very careful on when I contribute because I've had bronchitis. So y'all bear with me, but this is such an important topic. So thank you for doing this show, Cindy.
Thanks. And we have a very special guest. We've had several times already on the show, and I'm delighted about that. Hidden Queen.
Hello. Thanks for having
Hey,
me again.
good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here. I wish it was under better circumstances, but I appreciate you having me here to talk about it.
Yeah, like Sunny said, it's a very very important topic because um, it is at the center of the propaganda used by the GOP in the last few years and up to last weekend. We're going to see that. Um, so we're going to show you first a video of introduction of this issue, and then we're going to talk about it more in detail. Wes?
We begin the readout tonight with the frightening truth about where we are headed. I would like to draw your attention to a rather telling footnote in Justice Samuel Alito's treatise on stripping the rights of half our population by overturning Roe, which caught a bit of online attention this weekend. Now, in this footnote, Alito cites a CDC report from 2008, and it notes, quote, nearly 1 million women were seeking to adopt children in 2002, whereas the domestic supply of infants relinquished at birth or within the first month of life and available to be adopted had become virtually non-existent, unquote. The domestic supply of infants.
Thanks.
Well, that line caught some diligent Twittersons as weird, kind of.
Yeah, sorry about the video. I don't know why it was so glitchy, but I I have here the document under my eyes, and I wanted to read you where exactly we see this footnote and why it is brought up by Alito. So he is saying that Americans who believe that abortion should be restricted press countervailing arguments about modern developments. They note that attitudes about the pregnancy of unmarried women have changed drastically, that federal and state laws ban discrimination on the basis of pregnancy, that leave for pregnancy and childbirth are now guaranteed by law in many cases. That's important. We're going to talk about it. That the costs of medical care associated with pregnancy are covered by insurance or government assistance, that states have increasingly adopted safe haven laws, which generally allow women to drop off babies anonymously uh, without consequences, uh, and that a woman who puts her newborn up for adoption today has little reason to fear that the baby will not find a suitable home. And that sentence is where he adds the footnote. So this first part of saying that women have states law have banned discrimination on the basis of pregnancy. What do you ladies think about it?
Haven, you go ahead first. I saw you like you had a
Oh,
reaction.
sorry. I mean, so full disclosure, I live with an attorney. So when this came out, I was fortunate enough to have someone who I could sort of like say, like, explain this to me like I'm 5. And not that I think it needs that much explaining. And I'm not sure this is going to exactly answer your question, so forgive me. I can circle back. I think before we maybe launch into all of this, I think there's a very important part of this that people are missing or not fully understanding. And that's what Roe versus Wade, when it was decided, what was used as precedent for that case, and then what that case has been used as precedent for. And I think that people often, not everybody obviously, but have this idea that cases go to the Supreme Court and they just arbitrarily decide yes, no, whatever, right? The thing is that like so many cases are decided based on precedent, and often they don't even hear cases because they say, no, this precedent has been set, so we're not going to hear that case, right? Roe versus Wade, if I'm remembering correctly, is under the right to privacy, which I believe is the 14th Amendment. And it's not like they went in there and said, should women be allowed to have abortions? Yes or no, full stop, right? It was very much does a woman have a right to privacy between her and her doctor to do with her body what she sees fit because of privacy, right? And the thing is, the precedent for that beforehand were cases like, Virginia versus Loving, so interracial marriage. Before that, it was segregation, like where you can sit on a bus. And so Roe was decided under that precedent. And then that Roe, as a precedent, was used then to decide cases such as, I forget the name of it, but it's for contraception and also for same-sex marriage, right? So if you read that draft ruling, which is effectively the ruling, it actually says fully, Roe, we're going to overturn it because X, Y, and Z, but don't worry, all of these other right to privacy cases that we list out by name, we're not going to do anything with those. That's why we're taking an entire paragraph to write about it. So don't worry too much because we're definitely not doing that. And the other important part that I think maybe people are missing is because, there's a lot, right? But you hear people saying, oh, well, don't worry, they're just going to remand the rights to the states. So, if you live in a liberal state, then like, that's fine. 2 things here. I live in a liberal state. I'm probably going to be fine. And this is going to disproportionately affect women of color and poor women of color at that, because they can't afford to travel outside of the state. They can't afford to take time off of work. They don't have access to private practices necessarily like wealthier women might. I'm certainly not wealthy, but like I, again, live in California, and if I needed to, I could travel. The thing is from there, right? And sorry, I'm kind of on a soapbox right now, so bear with me. I'll get off it shortly. They're also already talking. So when Roe gets overturned, there are states that have trigger laws. They're going to go into effect immediately. And those trigger laws are like a flat out ban in the state on abortion. Doesn't matter if it's an ectopic pregnancy. Doesn't matter if you're miscarrying and you just need to get the fetus out of you because it's not alive. All of that, right? They're banning it, and they're making it a criminal act, not only for the woman, but for the doctor. And the even scarier part to me that I think folks are also kind of missing is this is the exact logic that was used to justify slavery. Don't worry about it. The states will handle it. It's not our business if you guys own slaves. And so I'm like, the amount of people that are just like, oh, it's just like, it'll be fine. People will figure it out. This is not going to have like a major effect on anything are wrong. It's going to have a major effect on not just women, and especially women of color and poor women of color. They're coming for all of those privacy laws, right? And everybody thought we were hysterical for saying they were going to, overturn Roe, and they would never do that, and that's settled law, and blah, 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 blah. But here it is, and Alito is spelling out in his ruling that these are the other precedents this is based on. So contraception is next. Same-sex marriage is next. And even if they're saying we're going to remand it to the states,
that's not an answer.
Like, hello.
That's not
like,
a
that
justification.
doesn't make it okay.
No.
Like, sorry. So I will step back. That is something that I feel like so many people have been missing, just in the general public, because we're not all well educated, and I'm certainly not well educated on it, but like how the Supreme Court works, how these rulings happen, what they're based on, what it means if something this long-standing is overturned. And especially because with these precedents that were being used and that were being set, there is a very specific reason they are doing this, right? And so like, if you thought you had some rights to privacy, I've got bad news. Because this is the same precedent that then said you get to do what you want in your bedroom. So anti-sodomy laws, right? Like, hello? Like, I feel like this is a red flashing light that is like, they're coming for everybody that is not straight, white, male, and Christian. Everybody. And I know people think I sound alarmist. That's because I'm alarmed. It's because I'm alarmed, and everybody should be alarmed.
And also, it's not going to impact women, white women, or any woman who has the means, or for those that these wealthier white men, or not just white, wealthy men get pregnant. They will ship them off to somewhere where they can, whether it is in the United States or not. It will not impact them. They will still get their abortion. And let's also make it clear that women will, of all socioeconomic backgrounds, will find a way to have an abortion. It's just that we won't have safe, legal abortion. That's going to be the problem. But you're exactly right. And I'm sorry, I won't talk too much, but you've hit on every point that I've been thinking about. You're exactly right with the precedents. And once that has been overturned, we've actually seen some of those trigger laws where they have said, because this is being overturned, we can go back to those laws that were on the books previously before Roe v. Wade, and now kind of bring those in, which is contraceptives. And of course, they've been fighting to figure out a way to get same-sex marriage overturned. They have it. They have it right here. Those are extremely important things to keep in mind. So I'm very glad that you brought those up. And I think it's something we've got to be talking more about. That's why we've got to vote in the midterms, because on top of all this that we have talked about today, just so far in 16 minutes of being on the air, keep in mind there's also things that they are doing to undermine things like trying to, they say that they're pro-life, but they're actually voting against things that help women and babies, such as trying to make sure that price gouging doesn't occur for these women who are suddenly facing a shortage of I almost said breast milk, and that's not what I'm saying.
Baby
formula. I've been sick, so my brain is not working. But they've actually, they claim one thing and they're doing something completely different with everything that they are doing in both legislation and getting, they've basically been stacking the courts from the local level all the way up. And this is going to have a major impact. So if we don't vote in the midterms, any hope that we have of trying to rectify this will be gone for the foreseeable future. For the foreseeable future. I don't even know when we could recover from this.
And to come back to what Hidden Queen was saying, I read several times in social media in the last couple of weeks, people say, if you say that because they are overturning Roe versus Wade, then they will overturn other things, that's a slippery slope fallacy. And that's not true, because slippery slope fallacy is when the link between what happens and what you claim will happen is not demonstrated. But it is in this case, because as Sunny said, there are already trigger laws that are in place for other things. And also, many Republicans have been saying, like McConnell saying that he wanted a federal ban on abortion. Some people were talking about banning contraception. So we know that it's going to happen because people who want it to happen say they will implement it. So it's definitely not a slippery slope fallacy because it is going to happen. They said they would overturn Roe. They did, or they are doing it. And so everything they say, they will try to implement it. And again, if there is no Democrat blue wave in the next midterm, then not only all this will be gone, but most likely the ability for Democrat people to vote, that's also going to go away.
Yeah.
Absolutely, just the right for us to we've already been gerrymandered for so long. You're exactly right. We will lose our freedoms, and it will take, I don't know, a revolution or something. I mean, I hate to even say that or even bring that up, but what will it take to get them to stop and to get us to be able to turn the tide?
Yeah, and obviously, I am begging everyone to get out and vote in the midterms, begging. But I also want to address probably a feeling of frustration that a lot of people that did get out and vote blue have watching all of this happen in the Senate, where it's like the Republicans are dropping, they're like Molotov cocktails into our democracy, and Democrats don't want to take their white gloves off, right? And it's time to come out swinging. Like the time has passed. That time was years ago. And I get that it's like, it's like they want to take the high road, but the high road there isn't a high road when the other team has blown up the landscape, right? Like, this is not politics as normal. This isn't anything we've even really, I mean, maybe some people have seen things like this before, obviously. But like,
yeah, if you play a game with someone who doesn't respect the rules, you cannot win. If you follow the rules, that's basic.
Right, they're just gonna flip over the board and take the prize. Bye. Like, and that's exactly what they're doing, and it's exactly what they said they were gonna do. So when people are still saying like, that won't happen, this won't happen, like, sorry, why would you think that?
Yeah, they've been very clear. They've not hidden their agenda. They've always made it very clear what they're wanting to do. And if they don't say it outright, they tell us by pointing the finger at Democrats and saying, look at what they're doing. And it always ends up happening that they're actually doing it themselves. They let us know. They tell us what their agenda is. We know that they are trying to gerrymander us out of existence. We know that they are wanting to overturn, they were wanting to overturn Roe v. Wade. We know that they're wanting to overturn same-sex marriage, contraceptives. They've told us this. And we keep, I completely agree with you. The Democrats have become, they have not evolved in the way that the Republican Party has evolved over the years. They had a long-term game. It's like long-term investing. And we've been playing, these short-term things. We haven't been looking past, say 1980s. And they've been playing a long game. They knew exactly what they were doing. We've got to start getting tougher. I also think that some of the problems are that today's Democrats are yesterday's Reagan Republicans. We don't have, they talk about all these left-wing activists, and we have a very, very few who are actually, Democrats, left of center Democrats, let alone the very few progressives that are in Congress right now. We don't have them.
Yeah.
We don't have, like they are saying that we do. And we've got to do something about that.
I apologize. There's apparently this person next door thought that this was the perfect time to whack their weeds. So I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to come back to what Sunny said earlier about baby formula. we need to look at the fact that Republicans have been complaining about Joe Biden doing nothing. But then when Democrats tried to pass a law to prevent price gouging, specifically on this, 192 Republicans, which means all of them, voted against. And then just after that, Marjorie Taylor Greene goes onto the camera and says that basically she's complaining that poor kids who are part of WIC, so it's a program to provide food for
Women, infants, and children. That are
and
below the poverty line.
she's complaining that they're going to get baby formula before the other. And so first they were complaining about the baby formula going to brown kids at the southern border, and now they're complaining about it going to poor kids, even white poor kids.
Yeah, but I mean, yes, of course, there are white poor children. I would never say anything against that, but it is very much a dog whistle to say, like, well, it's going to poor people. Well, like, who is disproportionately poor in this country, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that we don't have time for. But, like, that's just another way of saying brown kids, largely. They don't give a shit about poor white kids. They don't give a shit at all. But, like, they're saying this because it's a way to a way to create an enemy. Like, and a way that their base will understand, because this base of, like, rabid sort of right-wing people, they're still in this mindset of, like, you know, we're all pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps, so, like, I have to figure it out, they have to figure it out, without giving any thought whatsoever to, like, what that actually means for different people in different communities with different needs. And, like, it's just, it's very much a way for them to rile up their base, to be racist without coming out and saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have an article from Vanity Fair. I know it's not the best source, but it talks about Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, and he says, hold on to your seats, when talking about the U.S. Having a very substantial maternity mortal rate compared to other countries, he says about a third of our population is African American. African Americans have a higher incidence of maternal mortality. So if you correct our population for race, we are not as much of an outlier as it would or otherwise appear. Now, I say that not to minimize the issue, but to focus on the issue as to where it would be. For whatever reason, people of color have a higher incidence of maternal mortality. For whatever reason.
Yeah,
We know the reason. We know the reason.
It's not a mystery.
No. But I know there's nothing to respond to that. Well, it's so out of touch that you don't know how someone can say that.
Yeah, it's for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few some reasons that are widely known by anyone that pays attention. Yeah, anyway, sorry, guy next door is killing me. I'm sorry.
Tani?
I'm trying to even find the words, because in one sentence, he has marginalized people. He has effectively removed them from the equation, and then turns around and, like, re-victimizes them after making, it's primarily Republican legislation and policies that create the system that prevents people of color from advancing. Literally prevents them, putting those roadblocks in place. And so what I would really like to know is what, besides the unborn, what other lives are they for? I mean, because
Not the black ones, apparently.
no, well, not any minority, not anyone marginalized, not even poor white people. Because like you said, Heathen, they don't care at all about the poor white people. They are a drain on the white race themselves. That's how they feel. So they don't give two shits about anyone who is not, at least middle class, if not upper middle class. Frankly, they don't care about middle class. They decimated the middle class. The rest of, everyone needs to stay in their lane and be the worker bees and do what they need, the things that they don't want to do themselves, and be happy for the crumbs that are thrown their way, and don't, raise a ruckus. And then, what do you get in return? I don't know. I'm gobsmacked, and I would say speechless.
Yeah, it's hard to find the words sometimes. And I mean, so who was it? Amy Coney Barrett, who said, this whole thing about a domestic supply of infants. The fact that anybody could write that down, knowing that it was going to go out to the general public and not think they sounded like a total and complete psychopath, is beyond me. And I think it points to a lot of things, right? So so women are just like broodmares at this point, like providing babies for adoption so that somebody that can't have a baby can get that baby. And the thing is adoption is very expensive. I think most people know that. But who can pay to adopt? Wealthy white people, largely, right? Of course, there are other groups of people or other people from different backgrounds and races and whatever that adopt. But like, by and large, if you're able to afford adoption, you're wealthy. And if you're wealthy in this country, you're probably white. I mean, that's kind of the statistical thing, right? Like very, So not only does it make it sound like women are just here to reproduce, carry baby to terms, they make pregnancy sound like it's some walk in the park. And I think it makes me incredibly, even angrier when men say this. All it tells me is like, you've never touched a woman. Because if you have watched a woman go through one painful menstrual cycle, right, let alone pregnancy for 9 months, 1 week of a really miserable menstrual cycle, there's nothing easy, enjoyable, or like desirable about that, right? And that is a drop in the bucket for getting pregnant. So you're telling someone getting pregnant is fine. It's just going to like fundamentally change your bone structure forever. It's going to mess with your pelvic floor so that you might pee your pants if you jump forever. Like it might leave you with a huge scar. Your stomach muscles, if you have to get a C-section, might never actually reconnect. Like you might actually, I don't want to get to like whatever. Yeah, you can die. These are all things that are just like normal parts of pregnancy or like post-pregnancy, right? I mean, we all know what an episiotomy is, right? Like there's a lot going on with your body. Even like I'm not touching death because like, of course you can die. And I don't mean to downplay that, but like, these are all just like normal parts of pregnancy. This is like, if nothing really goes that wrong, these are just things that like happen. Right. And so like to say like, just whatever, it's just 9 months. And then you can just like, go drop the baby off at the fire department or something is like just so unbelievably ignorant. It's just so ignorant and callous. And beyond that, and I think we can talk. You guys want to know a really fun fact? There's just a study that came out that pregnant women, the leading cause of death in pregnant women is homicide. And you want to guess at the hands of who?
The husband.
Yeah, or whoever their partner is.
Yeah.
They're twice as likely to be murdered than they are to die from a pregnancy-related cause. just think about that for a while. But the other thing sorry, we can get to that in just a second. I just want to finish this thought here. Well, actually, I guess we could do that now. Sorry, I'm a mess today. Great replacement theory, as far as I know, and feel free to hop in, either of you, because I don't want to dominate this chat, which I think I'm doing. But effectively is that, like, they're worried that immigrants and children of color effectively are going to replace sort of the white baby population. I think that's a really overly simplified version. If you guys have more to add, please do. No.
So basically, there's the reality and then the conspiracy part. So the reality is that the birth rate in white people in the West is lower than birth rate in brown or black communities. So that's a fact that's undeniable. Nobody really disputes that. It's just a fact. But what they claim, so the Great Replacement Theory that was initiated by a French author, is that there is a goal by some people to make sure that this favors Democrats, because we know that migrants and black people and brown people, they tend to vote more Democrat. So Democrats want this to happen in order to stay in power forever. That's what Tucker Carlson says almost every day. That's what other Republicans have been saying. And so this Roe versus Wade and adoption thing, it's in disguise, it's a way to limit this issue, because they probably think that allowing white women to have abortion is the reason why the birth rate is so low. Whereas, for example, the cost of pregnancies and all that cost around, I think it's $60,000, the cost of the average cost of a pregnancy. So that's not a problem apparently for them. That's not one of the reasons why so many women don't want to have a child, is because they simply can't afford it. No, let's push that away and just say it's because of abortions. So let's ban abortions. This way, we will solve our white nation and go back to where it was.
Right. Yeah.
And that also includes, like you were talking about with immigration. They also say that the Democrats have been so lax on the border and allowing, open borders and all of this stuff, because we're trying to get them to come in. We want them to come in so that they'll end up voting Democrat. So it's a two-way thing. What I find very interesting is that abortion is also very expensive and difficult to obtain, even under the best circumstances that we've had in the U.S. It's not cheap. And it's never been on any health plan or included in government subsidies. So, when it's difficult for poor women to obtain it. And so what just boggles my mind is that you will have white women who will continue to get those abortions. I mean, wealthy white women. Or let me even back up a little bit, because it's not just women. It's, anyone who has a uterus who gets pregnant, who has the means, will still get safe, legal abortions. They will. And so what they have done is not actually going to assist them in this great replacement, stopping the great replacement theory from coming. It's not. What we're going to see is a whole lot more poor women die. You're also going to have people who are who just simply don't have the ability to get what they need necessarily in ectopic pregnancies or the like, who will end up dying. What we will see is more people funneled into the prison, the for-profit prison systems, as women who don't have the ability to defend themselves in court end up being going against some of these laws, and they just had a miscarriage. And we've already seen this happen. We've already seen women who are now in prison because they're accused of, committing murder when they had a miscarriage or their pregnancy ended. So if anyone thinks that that's not going to happen, it absolutely will. And it's another funnel for our industrial prison complex, I guess we could call it, the for-profit prison system. So we have a lot of there's so many different aspects to this we're just not seeing. People are not seeing, and they won't see it until it affects them. I mean, unfortunately, they won't see it until it affects them. When your, 18-year-old daughter ends up pregnant and can't get an abortion or can't get the proper medical care that she needs, and you face that, it's going to be too late. It'll be too late for your daughter. It'll be too late for you. And people need to be thinking about these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are the odds that at some point women start suing the state? Because if you are forced to give birth to a child, then the entity that forces you should pay for the cost of this pregnancy and the delivery. So how likely is it to happen?
I don't think that will happen very often. What I do think that people will start doing is suing the state governments when someone dies because of it. I think we will see that. Wrongful death suits will come, those type of things. I don't think that people will really be suing for cost of care, because it's, again, that entails a lot of money. And there could be some savvy people with resources who will do that. I don't think it'll be very common, though.
Yeah.
But I do think that there will be wrongful death suits that come up because of this, and way more than the Republicans are prepared to deal with.
Yeah.
Maybe class action?
I don't know enough about how that works, to be honest, to say.
Yeah, I don't either. Well, what I do think, though, that as the reality of the consequences start settling in, I think it will end up being a big backlash. It sucks because when, many of us have been saying this for a very, very long time, and people have thought that we were being too reactionary or too ridiculous and
dramatic because we're women.
Yes, exactly. Which reminds me, Heathen, you had said earlier about anyone who's watched, a woman that they love or someone with a uterus that they love going through severe menstrual cycles or going through having a baby. A lot of them look at us as being histrionic, and they don't take us seriously. They don't understand. And they think if childbirth is so damn painful, why do women continue to have sex? And so
why do men continue to have sex?
Because they don't have the same consequences. They ejaculate and then they move on to the next. I mean,
yeah, of course.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Sex to them is nothing but pleasure. It's not, and in fact, the sexual act itself can often be very painful for women because we have different issues. Yeah. And men don't have to even deal with any of that.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I think Correa said something about this, but you can't claim your fetus as on your taxes, right? You want to know why? Because they don't consider it a person. And so you can't claim your fetus on your taxes. And child support certainly isn't going to start at conception, but we're going to say it's not going to get any other rights. We're not treating it like a human in any other way, except for making a woman carry it to term, even if that means she dies. Okay. Like,
yeah, I think that the lawsuits are going to go in places that we cannot imagine, because this subject is so complicated that there will be dozens of ways to attack it.
yeah.
The question is how much this will be affect the GOP.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
I think it will. It's just going to take, it's unfortunately going to take time, because there are, the evangelical movement is very strong, and I'm surrounded by evangelicals, and I can tell you they're all for this. These women are all for it.
I grew up evangelical. Like, I've been telling people for years, this is exactly what they want to do. And everyone told me I was overreacting. Like I said, like, no, they'll never do that. And that's crazy. And blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't know how to tell you guys, this has been their plan forever. I mean, not forever, but for a very long time. They have been playing a very long game. And this has absolutely been what they have wanted. And so now when people are like, oh my God, I just can't believe it, I'm like,
welcome to the real world.
Right, exactly. Like, well, like, it's just, yeah. I mean, and I know not everybody grew up that way, and that's fine. But like, maybe if someone that did grow up that way, if many someones that grew up that way are telling you, no, this is their plan, and then you just kind of watch them marching towards that plan, like, maybe there's something going on here. And it's not that I care about being right. I don't care. I wish I was wrong. But I think that, like, so many times, not just me, everybody's saying this, was just dismissed, that's never going to happen, dismissed. And now people are acting shocked and like they just don't know what to do. And it's like, well, your first step is pull your head out of your ass, because like it's been very clear for a while. And so sitting here sort of wringing our hands at this point, there's no time for that.
Right. Well, I think part of that is because we had a system that in any other time would never have allowed this to happen. But then we got Trump, and everything changed with that, because he was able to do things and break through. I mean, there are things that were never codified into law. There was never legislation that was made to prevent things. It was just, well, this is how we've always done it. No one's going to go against this. This is how, what's it called? Not precedence, but this is like decorum. I can't think of what it's called, but this is how we run things. No one's going to go against that. It would be too egregious for people to do that. No, you always need to codify things into law. You always need to have legislation, because if you don't, it's an opening, even just a little pigeonhole that will grow and grow. Yeah. And Trump was very good at that. He destroyed all of that. And at the same time, as they recognized that they were putting this plan into place, you could tell that they knew that this was about to take place, because when Obama tried to get Merrick Garland put in, legally, it was his time. He was supposed to be able to do that. They blocked it illegally. And they did that knowing that they were going to end up having their plan after all the gerrymandering and everything else that had been taking place.
And the Democrats did nothing. They just took it. They just took it. Like,
exactly.
That was the point, to start burning shit to the ground. Like, literally and figuratively. Like, it was so crazy to me to watch this, because it's like, this is the only reason we have institutions that operate the way they do, is because the people in power respect those institutions. That's it. There is nothing else underpinning those things, except for the fact that we've all decided that this is the way we want to do things. And so we're all going to respect, like you said, the way we're doing them. And people think that because it's happened for so long, that like nobody, like, again, like you said, nobody's ever possibly going to go against it. Like, that's just not how we do things. Like,
but the problem is when someone does violate these untold rules, they don't do it for the benefit of everyone.
No.
They do it for their benefit. And so no one is going to go against those traditions just to make things better. That never happens. authoritarians do that, and when it happens, then they get more power,
Right.
which
Well,
is what happened to Trump.
Look at, there's, sorry, I just saw someone say no consequences, but it's like, yeah, look at Ginny Thomas. Hello? She is married to a sitting Supreme Court judge, and there is proof that she was trying to overturn a legal election. And we're all just,
influence her husband on the bench.
Right. And we're all just like, okay. Like, and people are like, well, there's just not going to be any consequences. No, there's not going to be any consequences. Like, have you been in this country for the last 20 years? There's never consequences when you have money and power.
Yeah, at this point, this is just a banana republic.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. And it's very sad to see that. But I remember back when I was in college, let's see, it was probably, I think maybe 96 or so when I heard, was it 96? Anyway, it was a long time ago. And someone had said in one of my political science classes, well, you do realize that the American experiment of democracy, which those words in itself, like, it was like a gut punch. I'm like, wait a minute, experiment? What the hell are you talking about, experiment? It's like, yes, this has been an experiment. I just never thought of it in any other way than just reality. But no, this was the American experiment of democracy, different from any other country in the world. And that it was slated to come to an end in the next 20 years, is what I was told. And it's, these people who look at kind of the ebb and flow of political spectrums in countries, international relations over time. And they said this, but there was also this underlying, it's not just the fact that there's the ebb and flow. There was also some very clear red flags that were starting actually as far back as the New Deal. After the New Deal hit, and the way that those they were not Republicans at that time. They were Southern, the Dixiecrats. The things that they had done, that kind of tried to undermine and immediately start chipping away at much of the New Deal. So this is not something that is new. But what we have gotten comfortable with in this country has been kind of a status quo. Again, Trump destroyed that. You look at January 6th, the insurrection, and we've had some convictions on a few of the people who went in. We haven't had anything on anyone who was there in Congress that were working to overturn the election. We know that they were. Yeah. Why is nothing? Why? Well, we still have this, the commission. Why is it taking so long? I mean, I work on cases all the time of like child sexual abuse and stuff. It takes a long time to go through the judicial system. It does not take that long to go through the investigative process. And this is the thing that bugs the living shit out of me. And I know that that's not on this topic, but it's an important thing to understand because all of it goes together. Yeah. It all goes together. And Roe v. Wade is the first linchpin for all of the other things that they're going to want to do. And by having, they basically destroyed our sense of trust in our government and even in the rule of law. And so by eroding those type of things and now decimating women's rights, it's going to lead down a road where democracy has a very good chance of ending if we don't do something.
Yeah, it is because, as I mentioned earlier, these elections in November, they will determine whether the U.S. stays democracy or not, because there are a lot of people at the state level who are being pushed by Trump, and their goal is to be able to change the results of the election. So if they're in place, Trump will win 2024, and nothing that will be done between 22 and 24 will matter, because once the system is that rigged, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And when that happens, all the rights that we've been talking about since the beginning of the show, then those will disappear.
Yeah. I wanted to just quickly address something that I saw in the chat, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I usually when I see a comment that's like not all men, I'm like, bye. But I just want to point this out. It's not that I don't think any men want their children. I'm not getting at that. What I'm getting at is that there are not the same consequences for men having sex as there in as for women having sex, right? So you'll see this coming out a lot where people will say, well, yeah, why don't you just close your legs? Like, okay, do I just magically get pregnant? No, right? There's another person here, but that person is almost never considered. And for better or for worse, never considered for better or for worse. Yes, of course there are dads who have full custody. Yes, of course these things happen. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if I get pregnant, some dude can basically go fuck off into oblivion. I'm probably never going to get anything out of him. And now I'm being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. And someone's telling me, well, you should have just closed your legs. Well, what about this guy? What about the other half of this equation that is having no responsibility unless they want it? Do you know how hard it is to get child support? It's not an easy thing. It's not like it just happens magically, right? Like there is long legal battles that it takes to get this. And like, yes, of course we live in a society that prefers the mother, but those things are connected, right? The reason that mothers are have an easier time getting the kid enrolled in school or whatever is because women are expected to do that. That is what their role is seen as, right? If you have a full-time job, even if you're married, if your kid gets sick, 98% of the time, who's leaving their job to pick their kid up from school, right? Does that mean dads never do it? No. But you can look at any statistic in the world. I majored in economics. I did an entire semester where I just worked on statistics for a company, and it was had to do with women in the workplace and why they leave and why they stay. I built the statistical models. Like, I know what the fuck I'm talking about. The reality is it is women that bear the brunt of all of that. Now, does that mean a man never does? Of course not. But what I'm getting at here is not that, yes, it's hard for men to get child support. Sure. But the scope and weight and degree of the responsibility that is placed on women versus men, it's incomparable. It's silly. Now, to sit there and say, well, I, as a man, I have full custody of my children and it's been so hard for me. I'm sorry it's been so hard for you, but that is 100% not the point. That's like me saying, well, I know life is hard for like Black women, but like it's also hard for me.
Right. It's a sense of, it's still a sense of privilege. You know, when you're talking about, and I don't mean privilege as in you get something easy. What I'm saying is that we know, like you were saying, statistically, it is women who are oftentimes forced into the positions that they're in. And I don't mean forced by rape. I mean, you know, here many times it's like, oh, he loves me and we're going to have this family together. And then all of a sudden he's gone and you're left, you know, often 5-6 months pregnant. So it's not even like you had the choice, you know, that window had already closed.
Yeah.
And then, you know, trying to get any assistance. And what you were talking about is the societal, the systems that are set up in our society that women are expected to be in that role. And so that's one of the reasons that we get paid less than a man does for the same job, is because they expect a woman is going to have to choose her family over the job in a lot of ways, you know, in her time and so forth. So it's not, we recognize, I think every one of us recognizes that men have a difficult time too. But when we're talking about women's rights, women's reproductive rights being decimated, this is not the place to talk about how difficult it is for a particular man in a particular situation that statistically is rare. Because we are talking right now about women who are literally going to die. Women who have been, all their rights have literally been stripped away. A corpse has more rights than a woman does, because what's at the root of the issue is that a woman does not have bodily autonomy anymore. You have to get someone who is alive and well to sign on the dotted line on what you can do with their body after they have died. But you don't get that same rights as a woman when it comes to your body and being big forced birthers. When it can kill you, it can destroy your body in many ways. It can destroy your health irreparably. And you have the long-term cost economics that are associated with this. So while I feel for men who are feeling this, my husband, we're both in second marriages. He is the sole provider, or he has sole custody of his 3 boys. And when we got together, his youngest, and so mine was as well, were in kindergarten. We have 5 kids now between us. I received child support. He did not. The 2 of us together supported our kids, and this child support that I got was very sporadic. And, you never know if you were going to get it or if you weren't going to get it. And he kept saying, oh, I just can't pay this month, or I'm only going to have to pay a little bit this time. But at least I got something. He got nothing. So yes, that happens. I've seen it. I've been a part of it. And we've had to work on these things together. And guess what? That still is not relevant or valid in the discussion that we're having today. So I'm getting upset because it pisses me off when we have to constantly bring in the other. Whataboutism. It's not appropriate right now. I am so sorry, but it is not appropriate right now. We are talking about women's lives. And we are not just talking about our lives. We're talking about all the other rights, like we mentioned earlier in the 14th Amendment, that are about to be stripped away, because this was the easiest way in. Get people thinking about a cute little cuddly 2-month-old baby, and think about that as if that's what a little globule of cells are. And it's ridiculous. So anyway, I'll stop now. And I'm going to start coughing like crazy, but we just need to understand that it's not the time and not the place. There's a time and a place for those discussions.
You talked about privilege, and you said it's not that it's easier for you. Yes, privilege means it doesn't mean it's easier for you. It means it's not as hard for you as it is for others. And that's why whataboutism doesn't work. It's because you don't have to face what other people are facing. And that's what we're talking about tonight. So again, I don't want to dismiss this man's Anthony Ray. I don't want to dismiss what you're saying and what you're going through, because of course that's very hard. And as someone who will never have children and never will, but definitely wanted to, I understand that this situation is very hard. And I don't want to shut you down because you say, I'll stop talking, I'll listen.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the appropriate response.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know that's harsh. I know that's harsh. Trust me.
Yeah.
I know it's harsh. But the thing is, it's not because we don't think your experience is valid, but we have now railroaded an entire conversation to try and make you feel better when it's our rights on the line. That's the difference here, right? Now, we weren't talking about every single man, but we are talking about every single woman. And instead of being able to further that conversation, let's talk about me and my experience, because that's not it. And I would never do that. And I'm glad you would never do that. But lots and lots and lots of men would. And even if that wasn't the case, now we have every single woman and person with a uterus that's affected by these laws, and they don't get a choice about what they would or wouldn't do. That's the difference. And I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry if that sounds harsh. We are having our rights stripped away from us. And I think there is a time and a place where people should talk about how hard it is for single fathers and how we can make things better for them. But you know how we make things better for them? By making things better for all single parents, and for getting a better system in place and for giving people more rights at large. That's the thing here. So yeah, and I'm like I said, I'm sure that sounds harsh. But I'm living in this like weird capitalist dystopian hellscape, and I just don't have anything left in me to be like, yeah, to be super patient on that topic.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to say really quickly, I made a funny face and I didn't mean to. We are in the middle of a severe thunderstorm, and it sounded like a car just ran into my house. It wasn't. It was lightning and thunder. So I apologize.
No.
I do want to ask you. There was something that happened on Twitter, having to do with Joe Lumen.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So Joe Lumen is a fairly public figure. She's a woman of color. She's a outspoken. I think would call herself a theologian maybe, but she's a very progressive Christian. I don't want to misrepresent her. She has all sorts of beliefs, and if you want to know exactly what she believes, you should definitely go listen to her because she's brilliant. The thing is that she posted a tweet, and I think on Twitter she has like 26,000 followers, saying that she would rather, and again, she's a woman of color, so she would rather have an abortion than have her brown child put up for adoption and raised by white evangelicals. She said that abortion would be an act of love. And as you can imagine, the whites lost their marbles. And it very quickly went from, I would rather have an abortion of a clump of cells that I'm making the choice with my own body than have that child come out of me once it becomes a child and be raised by people that are proving every day that they hate people of color. And a lot of like larger Republican political asswipes got a hold of it, like Charlie Kirk and who's the furry Ben Shapiro guy, Matt Walsh. And they turned it into, you hate white people and you would rather kill brown babies than have them raised by white people, which is just like exactly like a white person to do. And because these larger hate stoking accounts intentionally misrepresented the tweet on purpose to stoke their base, people were coming at her left, right, and center, telling her that her kids should be taken away. They were sending her death threats. They were calling the school she sits on the board for, and effectively saying that she, is a psychopath and that she's a murderer and that she's a ghoul and a goblin and she's hateful and she's, and they're tagging, like, I don't know if it was this time or last time, but they were like tagging the kid's school, like putting the addresses up there with her children's names. Her children. Like, look, you're an asshole if you go after an individual like that, but like she said it herself, fine, come after me, right? Whatever. But like, you're going to come after my kids and claim this bullshit and then sit back and say you're pro-life? No. And I think it got even crazier somehow, because this is sort of an aside, but I feel like since we're talking about it, I want to say it. There's a whole bunch of woke progressive Christians floating around Twitter that love to take that sort of, and listen, I'm not using woke as a pejorative because people call me woke all the time and I'm like, and what about it? But like effectively these people that are, supposedly like progressive Christians, a lot of these people that were sending vitriol and hate and death threats to Joe follow these Christians. And that would have been the opportunity for those people to check the fuck out of their followers. And you don't have to be aggressive and mean about it, although I was. You just need to be firm and rebuff these people in some way, right? Instead, you didn't want to get uncomfortable. You didn't want to deal with that backlash. And so you left it all for a woman of color to deal with. And I just want you, not you two, but like people that are hearing this, to think like, what kind of allyship is that? What kind of empathy is that? What kind of humanity is that? Like, if that was you and you were not willing to step in and shoulder some of this for Joe, you really need to re-examine how woke and progressive, and what kind of ally you are, because that was some bullshit. And how are you going to sit there and tell her her kids don't deserve to be alive, or that she should have aborted her kids, her living children, and then also say, like, I'm pro-life? No, you're not pro-life. You're not pro anything except for forced birth and control over women's bodies. That's it. Sorry, that shit pissed me off. But I will digress.
Thank you. I wanted to get a better take. I'd heard a little bit behind the scenes about it, but I didn't see it myself. And so I really wanted to get a better perspective and understand what that was all about. I think it is sickening that we have people who are so hypocritical. They're completely hypocritical, but really that's what this whole pro-life, which is, it's not, it's only forced birth. Because everything else that has to do with life is completely overlooked. Everything from, like we talked about earlier, voting against more access to the formula, by preventing price gouging and that sort of thing. From that all the way across the board, you're talking about access to affordable health care. You're talking about gun rights, or, gun regulations, excuse me. All of these different things, everything that would actually matter for life to flourish is completely overlooked and decimated. So it's a ridiculous term. It is only forced birth that they care about. And this issue with Joe is another example of that, because as you said, and as Courageous also said, that they are literally going after children that are living, breathing, sentient over a comment about a hypothetical abortion. Not that she had one, not that she was going to, but simply a hypothetical. And now they're, going after her family and her. And that to me should say everything that needs to be said right there.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that was really gross, to me anyway, was how many white adopted parents trotted out their brown adopted child to point at and say, like, well, look, you're saying that we should have killed her. Like, nobody is fucking saying that. Nobody is saying that. Nobody said that. But the fact that you feel so comfortable tokenizing your own child tells me everything that I need to know about the way that you view brown children, even your own. Or your own, right? And the other weird conflation people did was, like, I saw this one girl, and I lit her up, but, like, she posted a picture with her best friend who was apparently adopted from, I think, Guatemala, like 20 years ago. And she said something along the lines like, you're saying she should be dead? The fuck are you talking about? Like, sorry, I know I've started cussing left and right, but it's just like, really, what are you talking about? Like, no reading comprehension whatsoever, no nuance, no thought. I know how I'm gonna, like, gotcha, which is not a gotcha anyway, but, like, all of this tokenization of brown adoptees or transnational adoptees is gross, especially when most people are not listening to transnational adoptees' stories. When they tell them, actually, I had a horrifying experience, or actually, I never felt like I belonged here, or actually, like, X, Y, or Z. Actually, my white parents could never teach me anything about my culture. They didn't try. And because they had all of these ingrained biases and racism in a lot of cases, it came out on me. And again, is that everybody's experience? No. But if you're going to try and trot your little, like, adoptee out, then maybe you should be listening to the stories that adoptees are telling, listening to their experience, right? Instead of just saying, here's a picture of, like, the kid I adopted and they're great, everything's fine, look. Okay, well, why don't they tell me that, right? Why don't they get them out of your house for a while and then I'll talk to them later?
I'm not racist. I have a black friend.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same.
And it's like, what made you decide that you wanted to adopt a brown child or child of color, right, from out of the country as a Christian? Was it the fact that it was cheaper? Not a good reason. Or was it the fact that you thought you were doing them a favor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And what does that sound like? Sounds like being a white
Exactly.
savior. So, like,
Right.
if that's what you're starting off as, and you don't even have the ability to see that, like, you don't even have the ability to acknowledge that maybe that's what was happening, like, you're telling, I mean, you're telling on yourself.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, that brings up to mind something we talked about earlier, you know, with the Alito comment. The claim that that there's not enough babies to be adopted is utterly ridiculous. It's babies that they want to adopt a baby that is a newborn baby right at the time that baby is delivered. If you look at our the
Foster
child
care
welfare,
system?
you know, the not child welfare, yeah, the foster system itself, it is horribly overrun. We have lots and lots and lots of kids that are waiting to be adopted, that are in foster families shuffled around, but nobody wants those kids.
Right.
They just want the one from this, you know, sweet little innocent girl who, you know, oops, she got pregnant, and instead of aborting it, she's going to give it to you precious white family. And that's not the reality. That's really not the reality of the situation. The ones who end up giving a child up for adoption for, you know, there's many different reasons, and then they're not all glorious like that. But what about all of the kids? And that sounds like a whataboutism. But what I'm saying is, if you really want to adopt,
there's not a shortage of children in this country.
Lots of kids, right?
Yeah.
It's just not the ones that they are thinking of.
Yeah.
And I want to make that very clear. You're muted, Cindy.
Yeah, sorry. The last number I read about children who are in foster care and not being able to be adopted was 300,000. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
The number of children who are waiting to be adopted was around 300,000. Is that the number you are familiar with?
I actually think it's more than that. If you mean across the country, I think it's more than that. I know that here, you know, where I'm from, there are hundreds, and we're in a very small county. So I would, you know, extrapolating from there, I think that there's. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it's quite much larger than people recognize. And I think it's getting higher because we have had a lot of, especially after COVID, we have seen a huge rise in numbers of kids who are having, who are being placed into the foster care system with their and their parents' rights have been terminated, termination of parental rights, or TPR'd. To where we've never seen these numbers at least since my center has been open for 11 years now. We've not seen these kind of numbers. So I know Courageous put in 400,000, over 400,000. I think that is probably not as accurate now after COVID and some. You know, we've been in an opioid crisis for a while now, and that just got worse with COVID. There's been many things that have caused those type of things. And then you have people who are forced into giving birth. Not all of those kids are going to be adopted right at birth. So that's more kids that are going to be pushed into that system. It's going to get really big.
So I have the actual numbers. So it's 400,000 children in foster care and 117,000 waiting to be adopted. In 2020, it was 117,470 children in the US were waiting to be adopted. That's from Statista.
And what was the date from that one?
2020.
2020. Yeah, that makes sense. I would bet that it's probably a lot more now. I would just from what I'm seeing, and not just my center. We're part of a state chapter, and they were talking about this. We had one of our mini directors meetings, and the rise in cases in 1 month. We were looking at March because it was so weird, and we don't know why, but we had a across the board about 30% increase in 1 month. And it doesn't seem to have slowed down much. So I would, and on top of that, it's not just that we've had more cases that have come in. They seem to be worse. And so we've had a lot more parents being TPR'd than we've seen before. So yeah, I wanted to get that part in. Alito has no clue what he's talking about, basically. He has no clue what he's talking about. And even if we don't see, maybe we just have this tick up for now and then it goes back down. Even if that's the case, just hear what you said, just under 200,000 kids waiting to be adopted. Where is this? He said there was almost nothing. Almost 200,000 kids is not nothing. That's not nothing. What is he, what the hell is he even talking about? That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. They're seen as like cost of doing business.
Sorry, his entire piece is filled with bad arguments, like citing Hale, the guy who was presiding witch trials, and there's one paragraph that made me laugh. Actually, he's basically saying that the argument about the viability of the fetus is irrelevant because that depends on where the woman is. Because if we're talking about a woman 100 years ago, then viability is very late. Whereas if you are in New York and close to very good hospitals, then viability is much earlier. And if a woman is in a rural area, then it's a bit later. And that's right. The problem is only forced abortion people use this argument. And so he's basically destroying an argument from his side.
Yeah. He's gross. He's always been gross and awful, but it's just becoming more obvious now. Yay.
Yeah. So let me check if we have questions in the chat. Doesn't appear we do. We addressed all of them so far. So I think we're going to start closing the show. Thank you everyone for being here, for talking in the chat, except the troll we had and we had to kick out. Hidden Queen, can you tell us where we can find you?
Hell no. Let's see. Just kidding. Yeah, you can find me on TikTok. That's probably it is my biggest platform, Queen of the Heathens. I'm also on YouTube as Heathen Queen. I'm on Twitter as Queen of Heathens. I think I have an Instagram. It's all in my link tree in my bio on TikTok. Probably the easiest way to find it all. But yeah, I'm kind of all over the place these days. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for coming on as well. This is the first time I've been able to interact with you, and I think you're fantastic. A lot of the things that you said were well needed. Here I am with bronchitis and saying I was going to keep my mouth shut for most of it, and I ended up talking way more than I should have. But you just brought up so many great points, so thank you very much. I want to say thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. And I've sort of known who you were for a while, but I I didn't know you were even going to be on today. So I just showed up. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. But like, it's been lovely getting to talk with you. And thank you for having such a passionate voice, because Lord knows we need more of those.
So, Tanya, can you tell us where we can find you? You have your own show.
Yes, y'all can check me out Monday nights right here on Skeptic Haven. My show is The Sunny Spot. So check me out, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Mondays.
Okay, as for me, you can find me on my personal channel, The Path to Reason, where I talk about mostly critical thinking, and sometimes here as well with our rotating hosts. So I would like to thank a lot the Patreons we have, and because they are very much helpful in helping us running this show. We have 6 shows on this channel, Skeptic Haven, and that's a lot of work, especially for the producers. Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Courageous. The Patreons are Bryce, Jena, Deborah Grace, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone. Thank you, everyone. If you want to help us, you can go to the Patreon that will be listed in the description below. There are several levels you can help us with. Other than that, I will again want to thank everyone in the chat, and please go and watch other shows from Skeptic Haven, because they are very interesting. And in the meantime, I wish you all a very good weekend. Bye.
Bye.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same.